Hello, this is the first video about the General Data Protection Regulation. By the end of this video, you will understand what the General Data Protection Regulation is and what you need to do when processing data. We're going to look at the following contents. What is the General Data Protection Regulation? What are data protection principles? What do you need to do when processing data? So what is the General Data Protection Regulation? The General Data Protection Regulation, also called GDPR, is a law about privacy. It was drafted and passed by the European Union, and it imposes obligations onto organizations anywhere when they target or collect data related to natural persons. Here we have some terms which are defined by the GDPR. Personal data. Personal data is any information that relates to an individual who can be directly or indirectly identified. Names and email addresses are obviously personal data. Location information, ethnicity, gender, biometric data, religious beliefs, web cookies, and political opinions can also be personal data. Pseudonymous data can also fall under the definition if it's relatively easy to ID someone from it. Data processing. Any action performed on data, whether automated or manual. The examples cited in the text include collecting, recording, organizing, structuring, storing, using, and erasing data, etc. Data subject. The person whose data is processed. These are your customers or site visitors. The data controller. The person who decides why and how personal data will be processed. If you're an owner or employee in your organization who handles data, this is you. Data processor. A third party that processes personal data on behalf of a data controller. The GDPR has special rules for these individuals and organizations. They could include cloud servers or email service providers. Data protection principles. If you process data, you have to do so according to 7 protection and accountability principles. The first one is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Processing of data must be lawful, fair, and transparent to the data subject. Purpose limitation. You must process data for the legitimate purposes specified explicitly to the data subject when you collect it. Data minimization. You should collect and process only as much data as absolutely necessary for the purposes specified. Accuracy. You must keep personal data accurate and up to date. Storage limitation. You may only store personally identifying data for as long as necessary for the specified purpose. Integrity and confidentiality. Processing must be done in such a way as to ensure appropriate security, integrity, and confidentiality. And the last one, accountability. The data controller is responsible for being able to demonstrate GDPR compliance with all of these principles. When you process data, you need to be GDPR compliant, you need to guarantee data security, and you need to protect data by design and by default. What do you need to do to be GDPR compliant? The GDPR says data controllers have to be able to demonstrate that they are GDPR compliant, and this isn't something you can do after the fact. If you think you are compliant with the GDPR but can't show how, then you're not GDPR compliant. Among the ways you can do this, there are the following actions. Designate data protection responsibilities to your team. Maintain detailed documentation of the data you're collecting, how it is used, where it is stored, which employee is responsible for it, etc. Train your staff and implement technical and organizational security measures. Have data processing agreement contracts in place with third parties you contract to process the data for you. Appoint a data protection officer. Though not all organizations need one, we will look at this in a later stage. You need to guarantee data security. You're required to handle data securely by implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures. Technical measures mean anything from requiring your employees to use two-factor authentication on accounts where personal data are stored to contracting with cloud providers that use end-to-end encryption. Organizational measures are things like staff trainings, adding a data privacy policy to your employee handbook, or limiting access to personal data to only those employees in your organization who need it. If you have a data breach, you have 72 hours to tell the data subjects, otherwise you face penalties. This notification requirement may be waived if you use technological safeguards, such as encryption, to render data useless to an attacker. From now on, everything you do in your organization must, by design and by default, consider data protection. Practically speaking, this means you must consider the data protection principles in the design of any new product or activity. For example, you're launching a new app for your company. You have to think about what personal data the app could possibly collect from users, then consider ways to minimize the amount of data and how you will secure it with the latest technology. Thank you for your attention.